the product photos it's so important because, when you're in a craft show, people can see, touch, feel, smell, try on your products. But when you're in an online business, the only thing to represent your products is your photos. And if your photos suck, people are not going to buy. They're not going to have confidence to buy something from you as a seller. So it's just so important to just have a really good first impression with your photos.
There are so many aspects to handmade business and, really up-leveling your shop and all of those things. There's a lot of different pieces, and product photography is kind of like the precursor to all those things. So even though all those things are incredibly important, like SEO and making sure your product titles and tags and descriptions are great and your packaging is good, all of those pieces are really important. But if you don't have great product photos, you will sadly be wasting all of your effort on those things because no one will buy. So the product photos is such an important piece. So there are a lot of mistakes that I see. So if I go into Etsy, for example, and I search and I see all of the photos that come up, some of them look really great and some of them not so much. So it's really clear. I see a lot of consistently made mistakes that I know makers may either not be aware of, or you're just not really quite sure why that's a mistake or what's wrong with it and how to fix it. So we're going to talk about some of that today. So the first thing I want to talk about is the most important thing when it comes to product photography, and that is about lighting. So there are a lot of missteps when it comes to lighting, but lighting is the most important thing because it is literally how an image is captured. Photography actually means drawing with light, like it's derived from the Latin meaning drawing with light. So light is what actually creates a photo. So if you have light that is low or a weird color or it's too strong, all of these different things can really negatively impact your photo. So what I often see wrong with photos is that people have used something called direct light. So direct light is light that comes directly from the source to hit your product. So if you were outside taking a photo in broad daylight, not in the shade, just in broad daylight, or maybe you use the flash that pops up on your camera or on your smartphone. Those are examples of direct light. And what happens is it causes really, really bright highlights and really, really harsh shadows. And it just looks overall very unprofessional. So people can kind of spot that stuff right away and be like, this photo's not right. Something not right about this photo. Customers might start to kind of question the professionalism of your photos and maybe your business, which is not what we want. We want people to feel really confident in your business. So that is one of the huge mistakes that I see being made. Another huge mistake I see when it comes to lighting is people using light that has a color. So if you use overhead lights in your home, like if you take a photo in your living room or your kitchen and you turn on your overhead light, that often can cast a very warm kind of reddish orangish glow that will show up in your photos. So it's really important to make sure that if you're using any lighting, that it is not kind of like that warm or cold, one of the opposites. Daylight is perfect. It's neutral. It is just the right shades. It will help render the colors of your product as accurately as possible. So it's always great to go with daylight, actual, literal, natural daylight if you can. But if you think that you might want to invest in some lighting, usually product like actual photography lighting is your best bet because it will usually be that nice neutral color. Now, the other, of course, here's one that maybe the most of you encounter is the fact that lighting is just a little bit too dark. So you may find that there's some strong shadows, or it's just overall, you cannot get that to be bright enough. You keep trying to take this photo and it's always just too dark. So what can happen is it can be really difficult to get light that's bright enough, especially if you're using your smartphone. Lighting is more important than ever. And actually, I will ask this question. If you guys can write in the comments, and maybe May can have a look, who's using a smartphone and who's using a real camera? Both are totally acceptable. I definitely have students in my course who use smartphones. I have students in my course who have DSLR cameras, but they might, take snaps for social media and stuff like that with their smartphones. You absolutely can use a smartphone. But lighting and really knowing how to use that camera is really important when it comes to smartphones. So you need like extra good lighting, the best kind of lighting. So by setting up next to a bright window in your home, if you're just getting started and you want to kind of throw together, the very first thing I suggest people try is just find a bright spot in your home with a bright window that doesn't have any direct light coming in, because that would be that direct light we just talked about, those sunbeams that come straight in your window that my dog likes to lay in, those ones. We don't want any of those in our photo. We want to have just a bright window of what we call indirect light. So that's light that's coming in, but it's not immediately from the sun. The closer you can get to that window, the better. And you can actually contain some of that light to a space by using white foam boards to kind of block it off from trailing off into the room. Because when it starts to trail off into the room, you're losing a lot of that really great light. Now, I will give you one of my best tips. I kind of reserve this tip for really special occasions, but I feel like this is a really special occasion. So I will give you this hot tip of mine. You can download an app on your phone called a Lux Meter. And on iPhones, I believe the best one is Galactica Lux Meter. For Android, there's one called Lux Meter, and then in brackets it says Light Meter or something to that effect. Just look up Lux Meter and pick the one that has the best reviews, basically. And you can use that on your phone and point it in, like, take the camera from your phone and point it at the area where you're taking photos, and it will register the amount of lux in an area. So lux is basically the measurement of how much light is in one specific area. So it will tell you if that space where you're taking photos is actually bright enough. Now, I recommend you aim for over 1,000 lux. So really easy. You can download that app. After we're done chatting here today, you can download the app, go to where you normally take your photos, test the light, and you may find if you've been struggling with getting your light bright enough, it may be like that it's down into the 300 or 200. It's just too low. So that simple free app is going to really help you identify if that is one of the problems that you're encountering with your photos. So and some people often ask, like, is there too much lux? Like, should I look out for too much? Usually I find if you get up in the zone of like 6,000 lux, you may be starting to encounter direct light without necessarily knowing it, or it might be a little bit too strong coming from the source. It might create a little bit of imbalance in your photo. So, but usually that's not very often that I'll see it be over that number. So, like 1,000 to 6,000 lux is a good bet. I often get into this conversation many, many times because there is this pervasive rumor going around that you have to use a white background. And I don't even know, May, what's your take on the white background? Do you use a white background?
So my opinion on this has kind of evolved over the years. A few years ago, I might have said it's all about the white background. I take that back, though. I think it's just more about being consistent, whatever you choose. If you choose to have, that's just my opinion. I want to hear what you think about this too, Amy. Consistency is key because I have seen beautiful shops on Shopify, for example. I'm not really talking about Etsy, because I do think on Etsy it is actually smarter to not use white backgrounds because everyone's using a white background, and on Etsy you want to stand out in search engines. But when you're on your own branded website, I have seen some beautiful websites that don't use white backgrounds and do very well. However, I will say that it is handy to have a set of product photos that are on a white background because, I'm all about PR and pitching products, getting them in the media. And a lot of the times when you're pitching to magazines or bloggers, they will often ask you for your product on a white background because it looks like it's floating. And if you've looked at magazines, usually those product features, the product roundups, they're usually like a collage, and it's usually products that look like they're floating. Yes. So it's helpful to have, but I think the number one priority for me, philosophically wise, is just consistency. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. And that is actually one of the instances that I do say you should have a white background. There are times, like if you sell on Amazon, for not handmade at Amazon, you don't need white background for handmade. But if you're selling on regular Amazon, you do need a white background. And that is the other reason why I tell people you might need a white background, is if you want to be featured in these publications that do require you to have a white background. So there is definitely the opportunity to use a white background. I have a course on how to take a photo on a white background, so I definitely see the merit in it for sure. But what I find is that there's a lot of makers who think they have to use a white background, and they're really, really struggling with it. By the way, consistency, totally right. Absolutely. I think consistency is really important. You want to have a cohesive shop look. You don't want to look like they're all belong to different businesses. It should look very consistent. So what I tend to do is, rather than encourage people to continue to try to struggle through this white background, is I just encourage them to seek out a neutral background that works for them, whether it's slate or some variation of white, whether it be like marble background or beadboard or whitewashed wood or whatever. Some sort of neutral, and throwing in a texture helps with make them look a little bit more interesting. And like May said, when it comes to the, for example, Etsy search results, you want photos that really jump out at people. So if it's just a plain product photo and a white background, that is not very intriguing. It doesn't make people curious. It's very basic. It's very plain. It's just like, this is my product. But if you're putting it on something that actually kind of supports your product in a bit of a styling way, kind of is a little bit of a supporting character, then you have an opportunity to use a background that's going to actually increase the amount of clicks through to your shop you're going to get. And even on social media, like if you have a Shopify shop, you may want to post photos on social media to help drive traffic to your Shopify shop. And photos that are on these different types of backgrounds, more kind of neutral textures, are going to be a lot more engaging on social media than just the plain white background. White backgrounds are the hardest background to capture a great photo on. And it can be also really hard to make them look consistent unless you're really good at it, because, you know, products that are colors will create a different color balance in the photo. So in order to have the colors of your product look accurate, then the background might be just slightly reddish or something like that. And then the next one, you might be photographing a product that's yellow, and then the white background might look slightly yellowish or something. So there's like very subtle differences in the white backgrounds, and drives people insane. I know, we talk about it because a lot of my students are driven crazy by it until they stop trying the white background and life gets lovelier. But there is opportunity to use a white background, but you got to do it right. But before you get to that, don't feel like you have to, you know, figure it out, because it can be really frustrating. And a lot of people just feel like they want to give up. So you do not have to use a white background. They need to be consistent, like May said. If there are certain opportunities where you do need one, so keep that in mind. But assuming that you're not pursuing any of those options like regular Amazon, or you're not quite at the point where you want to start pursuing publication features and things like that, then it's okay to just kind of take a step back, find a different background that works for your product, make sure it is consistent throughout your whole shop. And ultimately, you need to make sure that that background is not going to pull focus away from your product. So even some of these texture backgrounds might be neutral, but like some marble has really strong veining in it, and that might be too much. And some whitewashed wood backgrounds have a lot of grain showing through.
Yeah.
And that might dominate a little bit too much. So it has to be subtle. All right, next one we're talking about is props. Everyone's favorite conversation. So props are important to use. They help tell a bit of a story. They make your product look a little bit more interesting. But there are a lot of faux pas that go along with props that I have noticed. So here are some that I have noticed. One, it can confuse what's actually being sold. And I know that you guys have probably heard this before, and maybe you've even experienced before. But if you go and you look up some product photos or some listings or whatever on Etsy, you may see some listings that have either a lot of products in the photo and you're not sure what's for sale, or even just one and they're very similar, and or just the way it's laid out, it makes it just not really clear what is for sale in the photo. So the last thing you want people to do is have to work for it. You don't want people to look at your product and try to figure out the mystery of what you're actually selling. So super, super important to keep your prop selection very simple. So I recommend no more than 1 or 2 props. That's going to help it from just being too chaotic, because not only will people confuse what's for sale, but when there's just too much to look at and someone's trying to buy something, they're just going to get frustrated and leave, because there's just too much going on. Like they don't want to have to kind of decipher, or they're trying to get a good look at your product because they're trying to make a decision, and they can't because there's just too much in the photo. So while you can add some more props for like your Instagram feed, for example, where you're kind of trying to make connections, tell stories about your product, that's a different scenario. But on your product listing, you need to keep it really simple with no more than 1 or 2 props. You also want to make sure that you are arranging them in a way that it's really clear what you're selling. So one way to do that is to make sure that your product is the largest thing in the photo. That's right in the middle, largest thing in the photo. Now, for some people, especially if you sell really small things, you may find that it's really hard to find props that are smaller than your product. But what you can actually do is it's okay to have larger props, but just have them kind of peeking in from the sides instead of showing up fully in the photo. Because if they do show up fully in the photo, people are going to start to wonder what's going on. Plus, they'll dominate the shot, and they won't. People won't be able to really focus in on what you want them to focus in on. So by having them just kind of tucking in, like peeking and be like, hey, I'm here.
Maybe kind of like totally do that. It's a little bit.
Yeah, see, that's a great example.
I'm actually looking for
have them like take up a corner or peek in from a side, and then that way they're supporting, they're a prop, they're doing their job, but they're not pulling focus, and no one is confused about what is for sale. Yeah,
I'm actually looking for a bad example, which I have plenty of. So I want to show that to you too, so you know what not to do. This is a bad example. I think. I hope it's like there's just I was using like this silver fluff thing as a background, and it just took away too much from the lollipop, and you couldn't even see the stick because it was just disappearing into everything.
Just too much, getting lost.
Too much.
Yes, and that's the thing, and that's the line that you kind of follow when you're styling photos, whether it be your background or your props, or even if you're doing like a lifestyle photo, is you need to make sure that the focal point of the image is always your product, and that there's nothing else competing for the attention for your product. So making sure it's front and center, biggest thing in the shot, and you can have props kind of peeking in from the outside. If you're taking shots that aren't flat lay, you can have them in the background and blurred out a little bit. So those are some ways that you can just really make sure that your eye is drawn to where it's supposed to be drawn when it comes to the props.